Hi, welcome to Speak in the Creek, where we've been gathering with all these healing heroes. We have 5 healing heroes we've already met who help us realize that we can find ways to gain strength together by allowing God to have full access to us, because God is always accessing us with power and strength and love, and sometimes we miss it. Today I'd like to introduce to you the next healing hero, which is a huge, strong and mighty healing hero called Stop Trauma. Stop Trauma is a healing hero absolutely necessary, because the trouble is that it is very hard to get up and eat and exercise and express yourself and meditate if in fact you are still in the midst of trauma. Stop Trauma is a way for us to remember that we need to be able to take pauses from the stress that is occurring in the present moment, and that we also could be aware that trauma from our past is still inflicting wounds and stirring up trouble inside of the deepest parts of us, which then show up in our daily lives today. I'd like to let you know that Stop Trauma is a way for us to acknowledge that trauma is still very much a part of our world and very much a part of perhaps our personal lives. We've been following Elijah, a prophet from 3,000 years ago, and Elijah was experiencing danger and abuse, and he was also abandoned and isolated. Sometimes it's important to realize that even today we continue to feel and experience those kinds of traumas throughout the history of human beings. Stop Trauma is a reminder to us that in order for us to experience the flow of God and to fully be able to let God access us, we can't be afraid. Trauma creates fear, and fear is a block to our being able to fully receive the love of God. So Elijah was told to stand at attention on the mountains because God would be passing by. The first thing that happened is that Elijah experienced the absolute roar of hurricane-like winds, but the winds were so loud and Elijah was so afraid that God wasn't able to get Elijah's attention. The next thing that happened was an earthquake, and in that earthquake, Elijah's ground beneath him shook and he trembled, and again the fear was a block for Elijah to realize the full flow and love of God. The next thing that happened was a fire, and in that fire the scorching heat again frightened and debilitated and shook Elijah to the point where that fear was a block to the healing, love, and light and information that God had for Elijah, that Elijah was okay just the way he is. It wasn't until a still and gentle voice of God that Elijah was able to realize that God's love was in fact informing and edifying and comforting and consoling Elijah. If the trauma is a block, then one of the things that we have to do is to realize that we must stop the trauma. To stop the trauma isn't always easy, especially if you're in a vulnerable position of abuse or neglect. And I ask you today to consider if there's a chance that you're in so much danger that you need to call 911, or in so much of a predicament that you need to call 211, which is the local number, for you to just say what's exactly going on, and someone will tell you who to contact to get help. But stopping the trauma is also a way for us to realize that the actual pause that we create for ourselves, where there's no more trauma coming at us, no more fear, that's the conduit for God through the grace and love of light and the grace and love of Jesus and all that is good in the universe, we can access that because that love and light is always accessing us. Sometimes we just miss it because of the fear. If there are ways that you're experiencing trauma in your workplace or in your school or in your family or in your neighborhood, in your city, one of the ways that we've learned at Oasis to put a stop to the trauma is to learn to set boundaries. To set boundaries around your life where you realize perhaps you're being inflicted by pain and strain and drain, and realize that you're not able to eat and get up and exercise and meditate and express yourself. So perhaps it's time for you to set boundaries around your life. And the other thing we've learned is that most times trauma can stop when you speak up. Speaking up is a key phrase that we use in our relationships to say, hey, wait a minute, that sounds and feels like you're hurting my feelings and I need that to stop. By setting boundaries and parameters around your life and by speaking up are ways that you can stop the trauma in the present moment. But oftentimes there are traumas from our past that continue to inflict us and to dig up scars that have healed somewhat but not completely. So I invite you today to stop the trauma with me here in this creek in Akron, Ohio, and I invite you to enter into the healing and saving power and strength of God. If we can pause for a moment together and pray. Dear God, I am still hurting from what I have been through in my past, and it still bothers me, and I'm still feeling the pain of it in ways that I can't understand or explain, but some days I just get up and I know that something isn't right and that it's still a part of who I am. Please God, even if you can't name it out loud what it is right now, please God, enter in and rescue people from this trauma of their past. Begin to heal and set them free so that they can gain strength to be able to deal with the stress and the trauma and the drama of their lives now. These things from the past are still completely encapsulating them in fear. They don't even know where it comes from. It just surfaces at the oddest times. So God, we ask that you would enter into the lives of people where there's been mistrust and where there's been abuse and neglect and dishonor and disrespect, and begin to enter into those crevices and cracks and heal. May the still, gentle voice of who you are pass through these walls of fear that people have built up around themselves. And may instead your light and love ignite in them healing and hope. Amen.